King Kandoro is undoubtedly one of the biggest rising stars out of Southern Africa's comedy scene. This is a different type of video. I got to sit down with King Kandoro a couple of months back. This video is long overdue, and we had a conversations about his journey in the creative industry. But we did touch quite a bit on the use of technologies, especially digital platforms, when it comes to expanding your brand and the work that he has done to put himself out there, coming from Zimbabwe, living in the UK, being a citizen of the world, and also at the same time his production process. So definitely a lot of tech was discussed. This video was shot around the time when I was testing out the Honor Magic 6 Pro, so you'll see shots of that sprinkled through the episode. But more than anything else, a great conversation with a great creative, someone who's making use of technology to spread the message, to get ahead and to make his mark on the world of comedy. So welcome to what I think is going to be a different type of discussion and content, for this, for this channel. Usually we're talking, technology, business models, that type of thing on this platform. But for today, I actually have a special guest in the building. That is King Kandoro.
Woo-woo!
I don't know whether he shares his government name, out in the public.
It's there.
Yeah,
It's there.
Okay.
It's Mukudzei Kandoro Majoni.
Yeah. So that's how we know him. I think over the years it was MK.
Yeah.
I feel
Hey,
like
you just took me
I was
back.
about to say there's some memories that came when I said
Like
MK.
yeah.
So we're hoping to have just a discussion around maybe a little bit of tech,
Yeah.
but content creation and that type of thing. That's one of the things I've spent time on this channel talking about platforms and the future of content and technology, all of that stuff. So hoping to have that type of discussion, with you. But before we get too far, I don't know if can I say welcome? Because you're in South Africa right now.
I mean, yeah. Welcome feels right, but awkward at the same time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you've lived here before.
I have.
But now you're UK based.
Now I'm a citizen of the world. I'm here, there, and everywhere. Yeah. But yeah.
Okay, cool. So one of the big reasons why I was keen to have this discussion with you is because we all have different content creating journeys.
Yeah.
Right. And I think your journey has been particularly fascinating for a person like me. Part of the work that we do, from a Lion Media point of view, is, we create our own content, but we also do a lot of content for
other people. Yeah.
for other people.
Yeah.
Shout out to, Godfrey Kadzere, who's my partner.
Yeah.
And you are one of the people that I would say way back in the day.
Yeah.
Right. We were on that journey from, early
days.
like Kumenya Madhorofiya, right?
Way. Yeah.
When you first started doing skits, online, I remember some of that was being, shot by Godfrey.
I think the first batch, the first
10.
content that I did, that was straight up, and even prior to that, Beg Roads did like a little bit of a dancing.
It's funny.
Dancing something. Man, the journey has been
Long.
The journey has been long, and the journey has been it's been a journey.
Yeah.
In the truest sense, because at some point you get lost, at some point you end up headed where you're like, okay, I figured it out, and then you're like, not so much. But all of that contributed to I guess this moment, the things that are happening now.
Yeah. The reason I'm laughing when you mentioned the dancing.
Yeah.
Do you remember this video?
Absolutely not. Oh, wait, who's that on stage with you? Is that me?
Yes, you. I'm showing MK a video that him and I did a long time ago. I'm not going to show it on screen. You can go and check it out. It's one of the earliest videos on this channel. I think 2013 or whenever it was.
Oh my!
Back, it was a different time.
Bro,
that's all I'm gonna say.
I look like I weigh 35 kgs. What?
Yeah, no. Some of us haven't done any of this in our.
I knew that video existed, but I think my memory had blocked it.
Yeah. That's why I was saying, like, what you call this? That's why I was saying, like, our journey has been long.
Yeah.
I think what you're doing now, even back in those days, we could sort of see.
Yeah.
Because back in those days, you're doing events. That was like Jibilika.
Yeah. I think that the easiest way to explain it was I've always been a performer of sorts.
Yes.
It was just a matter of figuring out what kind of performance comes naturally to you. The dancing was more of like, in as much as I could dance, it's not something that I ever felt I was the best at. You know, it's not something that I ever thought came as naturally as comedy does to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the reasons why I even brought up those early pieces of content, whether it's that specific video or Kumenya Madhorofiya, that stuff started out on YouTube, right? A little bit of Facebook, all of that stuff. Yeah. What I wanted to get from you, from content creation, this is where we sort of bring it back to maybe the tech side of things, right? You started out doing that type of thing on those platforms, right? Now you have TikTok, you have Instagram, you have all of these things, right? In the current universe, for King Kandoro, right? What's important to you in terms of platforms, and what informs your strategy around that? You're very big on Twitter. You obviously, we said TikTok, we said Instagram. You still post on what you call this YouTube. But I see you're also selective as well with what content goes where. Propaganda, for example, seems to live mainly on YouTube. As in full episodes rather. But other content,
there's little. I've never really thought about it in terms of actual strategy. It's guided by it's guided primarily by laziness.
Okay.
So there's certain things. It's laziness and also how much effort I've put into it. If I've put a lot of effort into it, it's definitely going on YouTube, right? Because that's where I believe, like, this thing in terms of one search engine, right? In terms of the library. It's easy to store and label information, right? Compared to any other platform in terms of searchability, right? Somebody can go and look up the name. They can't do that on Instagram or on TikTok. It's very difficult for them to search a specific piece of content. So you find that propaganda exists primarily on YouTube. Any kind of content that, be it your short form comedy sketches that I'm really like, ooh, you know, I like this. No matter how short it is, YouTube. And then you have things that I'm like, this is TikTok. Because, you know, very, very quick, very, very, maybe we're announcing tour dates. It's maybe going on TikTok, Instagram stories, Facebook reels, and things like that. But you find that for my I treat, in terms of instant communication, where I know most of my people are, that's now a toss-up between Instagram and Twitter.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. You find, I like Instagram because Instagram is concentrated, right? You get specific responses for what you've asked.
Okay, cool.
Right? So if you put up a tour date, or if you put up a specific, somebody is reacting to that specific piece of information, be it via messages or in the comments. On Twitter, it's a toss-up. You know, you put up whatever you put up, somebody's asking you from a tweet that because probably the algorithm is you've popped up in an algorithm for the first time in 5 days, right? So they're like, oh snap, I've been meaning to ask this guy about A, B, C, D, right? On the same is there's the bot are saying nudes in profile. It's a toss up of things, but I think I leaned very much on Twitter early days in my career, and it's still very much that if you want someone to just go spitball ideas and maybe turn it into something, it's a good place for that.
One of the things I've also been curious about, especially on your Twitter, right, is you had a previous Twitter account which had a relatively big following. But you then started a second one, which has now a bigger following than that first one. How have you survived Twitter? And I ask that because Twitter doesn't have the best reputation.
No.
And especially for our country, particularly, it can be toxic. Rather, not even our country. I'll say Southern Africa is like what happens on Twitter, what some people might call Black Twitter. Oh, it is... Yeah.
However, I survive. I try not to do things for shock value. I think that's probably I don't think I've ever done anything for... Most of the things that I've done, even when questionable, I'm able to stand behind them, and because of that, you find that I think it's also very transparent that this person is not trying to be... there will be times where things will get lost in translation, but the good thing about that is you still have people that are giving you benefit of doubt to be like, hey man, like you probably didn't mean it. I think what's bad is when you do something that gets lost in translation, everybody's like, right, we found you now. I think that's what Twitter usually is. I try for the most part to stick in my lane. I don't offer opinions about things that I don't know. Most of my opinions are passing jokes, and ha ha ha. When I feel, this is what I do. Whenever I felt strongly, like back in the day, whenever I felt very strongly about something, I would address it on a podcast. Because I always felt like Twitter is like the words, even when you're well-meaning, it's not possible to articulate yourself within, what is it now, 240? It's not possible. So I would go and rant on a podcast. So if you've given me a chance to speak my mind on a podcast, there's a high likelihood that you've had the full argument. It's very difficult to misrepresent somebody's words when they verbalized it. So yeah, that was my cheat code, even in this day and age. But people still try. You still get people who trim something out of context, and usually political opinions, or what I find more often is people who try and get a clip of what you've said to fit their political narrative, which has nothing to do with what you said, which is how, it's very scary, because now imagine if somebody's rounding off what you said to be insulting to a specific important someone. It's like, yo, don't get me beaten up. But yeah, I think for the most part, that's how I've been able to survive.
And I think for me, that's also one of the more interesting parts, right? In your stand-up, one of the things that you've addressed, obviously in a joking way, is your relationship to, ZANU-PF, certain political figures.
The
homies. Certain political figures, especially Nick Mangwana. Your relationship with him is well documented. I laughed last year when you and him took a picture together. Was it the Namas? Or
it was the Namas. It was the Namas.
Yeah, that for me, from the outside, that was funny. I don't know what chats you guys were having there, but...
Do you know what? I sort of regret that moment. Because I feel like... do you know what? To begin with, I didn't expect to win.
Okay.
Because I thought they were trolling me.
Oh, I see. Okay.
What
you're saying.
I genuinely thought, because there were years where I felt like, yo,
I've done
enough, absolutely, and I wouldn't get nominated. So, in as much as that year I had worked hard, I fully expected to be snubbed again, as is the norm, because I was just like, you know what, my content is not palatable to these guys, what I've made peace with that. I'm not going to change. They're not going to change.
It is what it is.
Zimex more standoff.
Yeah.
You know. so they nominate me. Yeah. But I was like, yo, these guys want to troll me because they very obviously want me to come and then give somebody else while I'm there. Yeah. That was my thinking. So I didn't write anything. I was just like, you know what? This looks fancy. I even took my brother-in-law. I was like, hey, let's go hang out with these guys. It's going to be nice. X is going to be there. Freeman as well. Yeah. We're going to eat nice food. It looks nice. So went there.
No, not a care in the world.
Not a care.
No expectations.
No expectations, whatever. Okay, cool. Right? They announced my name. Dumbfounded. So I'm walking there. I'm now... It's a
You're now creating content on the way.
Yeah, I'm like creating like a short speech of sorts. Yeah, acceptance speech. What do I say? My brain is raking up words. So I get there and I stand, and the person in the front row is the permanent secretary of or what. So in my head, when I was walking up, I was like, yo, I want to thank my mom. I want to thank my sisters. I want to thank my wife. You know, I want to thank the people for what. Yeah. I see Nick Mangwana, all of that goes. I see Nick Mangwana, all of that goes away. Yeah. And my brain goes straight for, I want to give a shout out to the permanent secretary. You know, this award is yours as much as it is mine. And he's laughing, he's pointing and like, yo, but yeah. And then I walk out. As I'm walking back in, because it's a long way around the hotel to come back into the VIP.
Man is waiting.
He is walking out. Right? He is walking out on some, I think he's like, my time is done or what.
Oh, okay.
So we
so he's not coming specifically.
No,
he's exiting.
He's exiting.
Okay,
It's him and his family. So he's and there's a group of people that are, he's like, people are sort of like, let's get a picture. So he's laughing. Bro, I tell you, that guy, it's either he has a split personality thing going on.
Yeah.
Possibly one of the most easygoing guys that you ever meet in real life. He has no false airs. As a matter of fact, he actually looks humble.
Wow.
You see him on Twitter.
I never ever thought I'd hear you saying that.
Because bro, fully expected to, because, you know, anyone in that position of power would be very, you know, he posed for pictures. He paid me compliments. He's very talented. What? And because people were being a nuisance. Another one. And he stood for all that. And I remember him doing this and going. And that was it. And then a few months later, I don't remember what was going on Twitter, and he was like, yo, this is the reason why some of us don't mind when comedians like King Kandoro make us the butt of the joke, because we understand that it's humor and it's actually funny. I think somebody had said something offensive to a high word, so he was making... But those kind of things, they always get me in these contentious waters, because people are like, we told you, Kandoro any protection. I'm like, the math is not math.
Okay.
Even still, but yeah, things like that. When we took a picture, there was a whole agenda. Kandoro has been captured. Kandoro is gone. That's why but you know.
Yeah, that's an amazing story.
It's quite something. I wonder what our next encounter would be like.
Yeah, because what I the whole, Nick Mangwana ZANU-PF thing, I think that's I guess something that people would expect, right? That there's going to be some tension, it's going to throw you in some put some controversy around you.
Yeah.
Maybe make people think certain ways.
Yeah.
And obviously for people with an agenda, just that picture on its own might be used as a way to say, like you said, the whole captured narrative. Yeah. But the other side of that equation that I'm more interested in is the politics part.
Yeah.
Well documented. But your relationship, whether it's online or in person, with other people.
Yeah.
And especially the people that appear in, let's say, your jokes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Are these people you know? Do they respond? I'm just going to use a typical one. Let's say Shaddai, right? Does he respond? Do you know him in person, right? And I'm only asking that simply because when you're online, when you're a public figure, there's you, there's them, there's that aspect. But as you sort of characterized with the comment around Nick Mangwana, there's the public aspect, right? Where people will be expecting, something.
So you find that there's two elements to that, right? There's people who, with the Nick Mangwana, it's a tough one because his position is very important in government, in our day-to-day lives. And I'm so glad that he's somebody who's open-minded about the whole, not so much open-minded, but somebody who knows that his job comes with that level of attention from everyone, including comedians, satirists, and whatnot. Then on the other hand of that, you have your Shaddaias or whatever they call themselves. I don't know him. I don't wish to know him. He's somebody that I've categorized as people that are doing things for shock value. There's absolutely nothing to be learned from that, right? When you find me making jokes or even including his name, it's because I have absolutely tried and failed not to. Because
Okay, I see what you're saying.
he belongs to a class of people that I believe don't deserve any more attention than they're getting.
Okay, cool.
It's more dangerous that the attention that they're getting because we're living in a world where people don't have the time to sift through thoughts anymore. They take things at face value, which is very dangerous for young people, for this generation. That level of misogyny, that level of patriarchy, women bashing is very dangerous in this climate where we're saying, the cases of domestic violence, the cases of all these things are on the rise. It's like a few days ago, I saw something on Zimcelebs where there was a tweet that was being attributed to him. It says something along the lines of, if you are in a degree that is a lot of women, that degree is a useless degree.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So it's things like that where you're like, you can't even... Nick Mangwana, for all his faults, I appreciate that he's doing a job.
Yeah.
This is politics. We might hate it, but at his job, he is doing his job well.
This is what he needs to do.
This is what he needs to do.
Yeah.
Right? If he was playing for the other side, he would probably put he's doing his job.
Yeah.
With this, I don't know what purpose it's meant to serve. Do you get what I mean? It's in whose interest is it? Is it in society's interest? Do you get what I mean? I would understand if there was money to be made.
Yeah.
Right? I would understand if none of it, you're just spewing hateful. So it's, when you see me, I don't even like to even refer to it, like whether it's my comedy, whether it's not his content. Anyone that I've seen without fail, anyone that I've seen bring his content on my timeline, whether retweet or via anything, it's an immediate block. I don't wish to discuss it, the merits of what it's just. And it's one of those things where you meet people be like, but from time to time he's right. Broken clock. Twice a day. It means nothing. If the general, so it's things like, it's a very interesting, position to be in, because like you just asked, like people will be like, oh, what do you think about that? I'm like, I don't think anything. So, I think this is the longest that I've actually spoken about this. I think this is the first time that I've actually spoken about this. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually the reason why I was asking that, because from I guess the content point of view, the discussion that we're having on content, on strategies, on platforms.
Yeah.
one of the things I was trying to lead to is, in your view, in the environment that we're in, and from what you can see. Because one of the things that's quite clear to me is that you keep your eye on a number of different areas, and you're quite up to speed, whether it's music, whether it's politics, just generally what's going on. Is what's your take on how people are in our environment, how people are using their voices and their platforms? And I ask that because you said you're a citizen of the world, right? But you and your family are in the UK. You have a strong connection to Zim. You are there, quite a bit. We're all from there. And there's that, that hand in the pie, and you get to compare and contrast to be like, in this environment, this is how, for lack of a better word, influencers are using their voice. But in that environment, this is how people are, using their voice. So I'd be keen to understand, to get your view, especially when you look at it with both an inside lens and an outside lens. When you look at our influencer culture, I'm just putting it in air quotes because I think there's a little bit more development that needs to happen for it to truly be an influencer culture.
I think the first and most obvious difference is disposable income.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So disposable income, for the better part, is what dictates how most people move. Right? You find that in Zim, because there is lack of it, there's not so much of it. You can't, like you're saying, the reward system in influencer.
Let's just call it culture or business.
Business is not so much. So to sustain this influence, people end up resorting to extracurricular activities, right? Just to make sure that they have eyeballs on them. Just to make sure that, because to begin with, there's all these people that have 50,000 followers on social media, right? That are fighting for the attention of 5 brands who can pay them, right?
Yeah. I'm laughing, but I know it's true,
They're fighting for 5 brands. Their fear, these people, is to become forgotten the next day or to become irrelevant. So you find you're on social media picking fights, you're on social media saying outlandish things, you're social media saying things for shock value. There's no one saying, yo, I'm really good at... And when I say there's no one, I don't mean there's no one completely. I'm talking relative to numbers.
In
general, but let me use that appropriate. There's few people who are saying, yo, I'm really good at dancing. Let me zero in on dancing. This is my shtick. This is my thing. I'm good at cooking.
This is what I'm going to do.
You find we don't even have to go far. South Africa, Bontle. I don't know if you know Bontle.
The dancer.
The dancer.
Yes,
How long has she been dancing?
She's been out here.
For long.
A long time, yes.
Right? But because in South Africa, the reward system is...
And the infrastructure
is right. So you find that within her dancing circles, she can do choreo for this, she can walk. She now enters, now you see on NBA Africa, she's doing...
Rock Nation Breakfast.
Exactly. Through what? Her dancing. She never had to do all these extra... You find that in Zimbabwe, people are being forced to be jack of all trades. So even the quality of... When you now ask how people are using their voices... No one is actively thinking about using their voices because, again, the circumstances of when they are being used to, it's like, to what point? To what end? Whereas in the UK, infrastructure is ridiculous, right? Infrastructure is ridiculous. You could, to put it, the UK is almost like an inverted South Africa.
Okay.
Predominantly black in South Africa. Minority. Yeah. Whereas in the UK it's predominantly white. Minority black population, not more than 5%. But within those black circles, if you pop, you pop. Men's Not Hot, right?
Big shot.
Big Shark went. Why am I? All your Afrobeat stars. That's where they popped. Your Whiskey, your Burna Boy. That's where they bubbled and became. Now you look at all this UK rap. They've created
grime scene,
the grime scene. They've created mega stars, right? Now all those people, they're now using their voice to speak to black issues. Right, they get to a certain level of influence, and they're now advocating for beating spaces where they're saying, "Yo, in modeling, we need more black people. We need more black people on TV, in ads, and things like that." Because the money is moving in a way that is actually traceable. People know that if I do these things, I can get to the other side and actually talk to my people. You find that your Stormzies are creating scholarships for black people to send, and opening book imprints and all things like that. So in Zim, brother, the people that are using their voice to speak to issues of national processes and all, like you are, why? It's almost like you're speaking to the wall. So. Yeah, I think the main, I would stress it. There's so many problems, but the most obvious one is just the lack of disposable income. There's not enough of it for people to actually say, "Yo, I'm going to commit $10 to pay, be it for this creator's content on Patreon, or to buy them a coffee, or to send them an eco cash, or to go attend a show with renewed frequency." And yeah, I think the moment that is figured out, the moment a little bit more money is flowing, shout out to the corporates that do the little they can to actually give creators. Big shout out to those. Yeah, because they're literally changing lives. Literally changing lives.
Yeah, no doubt on what you call this. There's no doubt on that front. I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned just now on the issue of disposable income, right? Because of the position, and when I say position, I'm just basically saying your geography. Right. Have you been able to monetize any of your social media platforms? You don't have to tell us how much, of course.
When you say monetize, what do you mean?
Like, so for example, if it's YouTube, is there AdSense money coming through? Because
right.
You have more than one YouTube channel. Right?
Yeah.
Is there money that's coming in from that?
Yeah.
I think TikTok's creator purse is a bit tricky, and that's not even a Zim essay or anything. That's just around the world.
Yeah.
It's I know that so many people on TikTok that blow up on TikTok want to go to YouTube.
Yeah.
So that they can actually monetize.
I think YouTube is where the money is at. All my platforms I think are monetized, except for Instagram and Twitter. But part of the creator program on TikTok, Facebook, I think they have that stars thing, and then YouTube AdSense for Black and Forth for my main channel. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but yeah, most of the main, I would say in terms of channel monetization is probably AdSense, because the AdSense, again, it also feeds into a lot of things, isn't it? Yeah. As long as you are doing your high value content, post 8 minutes, you get something. You get something. Yeah. I don't know whether it might also be, with regards to geography. Geography helps as well.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, the CPMs or the rates.
Yeah, I think
imagine they are higher.
I've actually never sat down and compared, but they might be lower slightly purely based off the number.
Okay.
of people who do what I do in the UK.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Like based off category alone, like they would be a dime a dozen because every next person
Is also doing
yeah
this.
they
Okay.
you know they would so what I then do is I think my channel is categorized under news or something like that.
Yeah.
News entertainment or I don't remember, but I guess in Zim now you are dealing with, I don't know if Zim's CPM is based off Zim alone or they just blanket it as
Like a
Southern
region,
Africa, a
like,
region based,
okay,
and then they just say comedy, African comedy. I don't know, but I'll look. Those would be interesting figures to actually compare what. But I think also just in general, in terms of what would offset that difference now, is what the Euro-based companies would be willing to pay, I guess, pay. And then now, if you're comparing the value of that pound versus the value of a, African company paying for, I think maybe those end up offsetting each other.
Each other.
Yeah.
And, I was going to ask something else, which I'll come back to
Yeah.
just now. But that aspect that you just spoke about now, around, I'd never thought about it like
Yeah.
that. To say that in the UK, there's probably more money,
Yeah.
but that money is being spread amongst a much bigger
Yeah.
pool of
Yeah.
talent and content creators.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'd never thought about
Yeah,
that
because
particular dynamic.
13-year-olds waking up with their they are reviewing things now.
Yeah.
Babies are reviewing things.
Yeah.
And you also enter now your Twitch streams and
Yes,
what
that's
and
big.
it's
Huge.
ridiculous.
Huge.
So you see it goes back to the issue that we're talking about of disposable income now, right?
Yeah, because in those parts, someone can have a live stream and there's a Cash App thing going on. There's all this stuff. Like, someone can walk out of a 2-hour stream and say, I've made $500 or something.
Ridiculous. 500, we're talking like that's the bottom barrel. We're talking thousands per stream.
Yeah, I feel like Casanat or any of those guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're talking about 21-year-old millionaires who are living in ridiculous. So you see now with that that whole streaming economy, that is something that parents in the UK have started accepting, that this is an actual career.
Yes.
Right? Which parent in Zimbabwe or even South Africa would look at that and be like, no, it's okay, my son. It's okay, my son. No, no university for you. Stream away.
Yeah, it's funny. I was having this conversation with an older lady.
Yeah.
Who's like in her 50s recently, and we were laughing about how, in our days growing up, video games were seen as an absolute waste of time. But now with esports and all of that stuff, these kids are making ridiculous amounts of money together with the live streaming. That you're talking about. But on the entertainment side, I want to come back to the Zoom conversation. One of the things that's done well in the, let's call it the Zim circles, and even, I'm just going to call it the Southern Africa, because SA also has a huge culture around it, is skits, comedy skits, right? For a person who's sitting, we're going to use the example of Zimbabwe, because this is what people are exposed to. On WhatsApp, all of these places. You make a comedy skit. Where's the money in that? And I'm asking from an educational point of view, for someone who doesn't look at this space, for someone who's just, they're just looking at it and maybe thinking, oh, you're wasting your time. Right? What's the bigger picture there?
So I think the bigger picture is visibility. Because then with that visibility, you then you do, it's a long con. It's a ridiculously long con. You do enough skits, you do enough good skits, you're following doubles, triples, whatever it is, brands start giving you deals like, hey, we want ABCD promoted in a funny skit. How much do you charge? So you start saying, yo, I charge 200, 300, 400. You know, I know guys that are charging $700 per skit, right? It's a strategy that works, but you have to be really good. You have to be incredibly good, because the trouble with doing that is that at some point, if all your skits are promotional videos or adverts disguised as skits,
people will switch off.
People disengage because they know they are being sold something. That's the first step. The second, I don't know what's the second what thing to that is, I don't know if it necessarily translates into sales, which almost creates a discrepancy between the guy that has hired you and what you can do for them. Right? Because when somebody is, usually the case is when somebody comes to buy whatever it is they've come to buy, they actually want to see people coming to say, yo, how far they want you to translate into that. For the most part, it never really does. What it does is that it creates visibility for people to be like, oh, we didn't know about this thing. Cool. Right? Because how often is it that something is marketed to you and you're like, oh, snap, I've been looking for this thing. Right? I think skits work well in terms of raising awareness. For something that, for a call to action, like an actual, I need you to sign up, it's a minimum 10 skits for that, right? Which now creates a discrepancy between what you can do, what you said you can do, to the person that has hired you and what you can actually do. My fear has always been being found out. That's why you find that I don't do any of, like, very rarely do you find me doing, I will do that kind of skit for something that I know people are already buying.
Okay.
Like Chicken In. Like, I would do a skit for Chicken In.
Yeah.
Because there's no way people are going to stop buying chicken in. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But if you are, like, I wouldn't think, unless it's on it's a proper way, this is a televised ad. It's a no-brainer. It's going to go on. It's going to be seen by, and we are not really necessarily. We just want you to be the voice of Nigerian, because the amount of pressure that I think that, like, hey, we want to get 1,000 downloads from this thing, you know, and that thing is it's a new product in the market. I gracefully decline. Because the pressure now, it's, you're going to walk away from that like, hey, that guy is not as influential as we thought he was.
Yes,
you know,
there's always just that thing of, sure, you have a lot of followers, but how does that translate to?
You know, so I always try to stay in my lane. For me, comedy sketches have worked well in terms of raising just increased visibility that was directed towards, oh, this guy is a comedian and he does stand-up. Or that's the guy that we saw on that skit there, or he's having a show. And then there was a time where I kind of stayed away from them a little bit because I was very afraid of the idea of going viral.
I won't lie, that is not what I expect. In this social media age, someone is saying that they're afraid of going viral.
Now, not so much. But when I started, I was afraid because I was always conscious of the comedy that I wanted to do, right? And you can never control what goes viral.
Oh, yeah,
you can never say this is going to go viral because it will surprise you. But when a clip would go viral, I would be off social media for like 2 weeks. And I would never do the same kind of skit again.
Really?
Yeah. So you find like these, let me check, what was the first? I think Relative. Combre Dambran Due was the first one to kind of go And then there was that clip that of me taking nyama from a plate and guys saying, "Who?"
Yes. The couple.
No. The one where I'm standing by a braai with a plate.
Yeah.
Right? So I go to pick up pieces of meat.
Okay, yes, I remember.
Right? And then I lift the bigger one. Because that went Africa. Like that got to this
Africa
day, it
attention.
gets claimed by other countries as a Ghanaian or a South African. My fear was waking up with 10,000 followers that I wouldn't know how they got there. Because then that would mean I would have to entertain these people somehow based off what they saw.
Yes.
And I was afraid of not knowing what I was good at the time. So if I'm being forced now to create this kind of content, I will never know what I'm actually good at, because that's what I'm good. I've seen it happen to, because being viral is very addictive.
Yeah.
That level of attention, waking up, you're so...
You think you've cracked the code, you found the formula.
Right. And the moment you start experimenting with something else, people are like, it's a bit... It's not funny anymore. But you're like, yo. And so what was important to me is getting, I wanted to get good before I got seen. So
have you reached that stage?
I think I did.
Okay.
I think because what I was trying to do is I was doing everything, right? I had a podcast, wanted to find out, is it something that I'm good at? Is it something that I enjoy? I was writing and doing, satire with Magamba. I was doing stand-up, I was doing word, and I was finding what I enjoyed, and I enjoy all of it. But now, because I believe I took my time, I can do all those things when I want to, without people saying, we miss ABCD. Do you get what I mean? Because there's people within the King Kandoro family, there's people that have come or found out about me through Saturday in the morning. They get into this space and they're like, oh snap, this guy does propaganda. Right? There's people on Facebook who found me through Kumenya Madhorofiya. They come here, they're like, oh snap, this guy does these catch and release skits. Oh, okay. So it's these pockets where people find commonality. They're like, oh, okay, this is my guy for real, because I know I can go Nkoma Bruce, I can go Kumenya, I can go, all these. This is one person. We can never pigeonhole him. We can never box this guy, because I can come and go as I please. Because when these things have come, no one has ever told me, oh, can you give us, when I feel like it, and you find that they are, for the most part, received or welcomed by a already a receptive audience that is accepted. You know what, this guy, with all humility, can do it all.
You know what I like about what you're talking about? There's this thing when you're online.
Yeah.
Whatever platform you're on,
Yeah.
there's two things. Some people know someone as, I know Kandoro as that person I follow on Instagram.
Yeah.
And for some people, when I see him on YouTube, I'm not sure how to react.
Yeah.
And then other people, it's a brand type of thing to be like, what I know Kandoro as skits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't come at me with this news, political commentary, late night thing that you're now doing.
Yeah.
Right? People in PR and comms would, and maybe a measure of marketing would say, you're confusing your audience.
Yeah.
You're muddying your brand.
Yeah.
Right? But you seem to be very comfortable with that complexity.
Yeah.
Right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of it fits into the broader, I am a comedian.
Yeah.
But others might be like, no, but you're a stand-up guy. Or no, you're that guy who does the news. Or no, you're a podcaster. Like, how do you deal with that? Like, and do you feel like your core Kandoro audience has just accepted that this is...
People are complicated, bro.
Of course.
Yeah. So it's a reflection of that.
Yeah.
People are complicated. People are multifaceted, right? it's very rare that you actually find somebody who likes all those things.
Yes.
Right? It's very rare that you find. Some people just like Nkoma Bruce, and that's them. Some people just like propaganda.
Yeah.
Some people just like the podcast, and that is fine. What I am saying is I can do all those things because I am a multifaceted comedian.
Yeah.
But what these things exist to serve, right, is that at the end of the day, the thing that I really do is stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
Right? So when you come to a Kandoro show, you hear all those things.
Coming through.
Yes. You hear the Kandoro that does propaganda,
Yeah.
because that's the political segment.
Yeah.
You hear the Kandoro on the podcast because that's the loose, ill-fitting, that's saying the first funny thing that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's it's unfiltered.
Yeah.
Propaganda, there's a teleprompter, which means we've written a script. Right? We are reading off script. This means these words are well considered. There's a start and a finish. It's a well articulated argument. On the podcast, it's probably the same. So how we usually used to do the propaganda is most of the thoughts that you end up seeing on propaganda, they start as a flimsy argument on the podcast. That ends up being developed into a proper debate, a back and forth in my head. Like, oh, okay, let's give you a. Then on the sides of Nkoma Bruce, this is a ghetto youth, well-roundings of social life, of community life, all those things come together. That upbringing, guy next door type situation, man of the people. That's generally the idea that I'm trying to communicate through my content. That anyone is welcome, anyone and everyone, because
come into the party. There's
something for you.
Yeah.
I never wanted to. You find that, for lack of a better word, propaganda would be seen as elitist.
Okay,
right?
I can.
Within
context, I can see that.
Yeah, because somebody can dismiss propaganda off the face value of, you are having. First of all, to begin with, to have political conversations on that level in Zimbabwe is a level of privilege.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
To be discussing, some people are going through it, right? So for you to be sitting down and articulating your thoughts and what, your life has to be balanced on some level. That I'm doing a time, so somebody can dismiss it offhand. But speaking English, I don't have time for that. So to balance that is now the same thing that we speak about on propaganda, followed through the follow-up conversation on the podcast in a much more relaxed way with a co-host poking holes and what and right. There's a time where I took the abstract version of a propaganda episode and took it on Black and Forth, which then became, it's probably the most viral segment of portion of Black and Forth.
It was about the cars.
Yeah, the Wicknell bit.
I remember that bit, yeah.
Right? If you are somebody who has been watching propaganda, you would have seen this thought process. Because I came on that podcast with a fully articulated argument, right? It's something that I had been thinking about, because the propaganda episode was meant to be titled Mbinga Ecosystem, right? About how, the everything in Zimbabwe is now tied to this whole ecosystem, which is rewarding people dubiously. Everyone now strives to be a Mbinga, not to be a rich person, which would be what we.
Everywhere else, you want to be,
rich. You want to be rich of traceable wealth, right? Almost everyone that is in this ecosystem, you can't even. There's no tax returns. You can't articulate where this money is coming from. So it was an episode which I then thought, of all the things that I want to do this year, if I do it as propaganda, it would have got the wrong kind of attention.
Yeah.
It would have got people saying, I mean, that section of the podcast ended up doing the same thing, but not on the level that propaganda would have.
Because the context was different.
Context was different.
Okay.
You know, the setting would have been different. You know, on the podcast, it just looked like some random boys talking about nonsense. You know, Munashi's interjection. But when you do it with a news background, it sounds like somebody has sent you.
Yeah, okay.
You
like
know,
there's an agenda behind.
Yeah, it sounds like there's an NGO that has released money for you to invest. Do you get what I mean? So it's a different
I
connotation.
see what you're saying. You know, as you're talking, one of the things that I'm reminded of some controversy that Trevor Noah took on when he first started the Daily Show.
Yeah.
And he compared Donald Trump to an
African
African
dictator. Yeah.
Right? And when you see the issue that was faced around his tax returns in the US, all those years people trying to get a hold of these tax returns, for some reason in my head I'm like, that issue of traceability and all of that stuff, you kind of see what Trevor was trying to say, because you could transplant that guy into Mbinga ecosystem and you do well.
And do well.
And do well.
But again, you see the difference, again, the issue of placement, and the reason why that whole segment was controversial, right, was because now it looked like Trevor was being sent to bash African president, right? But these are things that we say about African president. We called our African presidents dictators. But now because Trevor was saying it on an American news network, we were nitpicking and saying, Trevor, why are you washing our dirty laundry? So I'm saying that to support the point about how propaganda would have been seen as, you know, some things carry more weight just of how you've articulated. Trevor has said worse things while doing stand-up about African politicians. Like, I mean, in terms of disparaging, right? But because, you know,
it's relaxed.
You just look like a guy wandering off stage. But the weight of the Daily Show, the amount of writers, it's in New York, it's what, it's flashy. They're like, the white man is using an African brother to speak ill about his, you know. You know, so those are the kind of things that I take into consideration. I think going back to our first issue, I think even the relationships that I have, be it with Nick Mangwana, relationships is or Masia or whatever. I think there is almost an understanding that none of this is being said in bad faith. It's something that I take great care about, right? You can go through all of my stand-up, all of my podcasts. There's never a time where I speak about Nick's personal life. I don't even know who he's married to or how many kids he has, because it's not about that, right? None of the people that I speak about, I think I've never taken the great... Even when there is actual information or the vice president has been caught, it's not in my stand-up at all, because I think that's where the line is. That's where it becomes personal.
You sort of address them in their arena.
Yeah.
You are a politician. You are meant to be taking care of XYZ.
Yeah.
We're gonna criticize you
based off that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I feel like when you keep it like that now, the burden on them having any other reaction other than ignoring you carries more weight. Because to me, they would rather ignore than to make more of an issue, because when this is now being placed in the public arena, it's like, okay, what was his fault? Like, what was the thing that really...
Yeah, what do
you know,
what's your comeback?
Like, what? Because this guy this is a well documented, and none of the things that I say are things that I'm using private investigators. It's in the Herald, it's in the Daily News, it's things that are already in the public domain. you know. And I think when it comes to that, there is almost an adversarial appreciation. Like, you know what, fair enough. You know, that's
We might
really,
not like it, but it's
exactly.
fair. It's fair.
It's a fair and decent assessment that hasn't. It hasn't. I'm friends with, very good friends with, you know, your like George Charamba's kids. You know, they have had me say
What they say.
what we say about their
But
father.
what are you gonna say?
You know, so it's things like that where it's like there's an appreciation, like, hey, Wangu, do what you gotta do. You know, none of it is personal. Otherwise, you know.
So you see what you've just articulated now, especially that relationship between the podcast, your stand up, the skits, all of that
Yeah.
stuff, right? We started off this conversation, and I was asking you about the strategy.
Yeah.
And you initially said that you didn't have a strategy. And I would counter to say that you've basically
Right.
articulated that there is thinking
They
behind
yeah.
how you're positioning. It might not be a Instagram, TikTok, YouTube conversation,
Yeah, it's
but
the-
it's a positioning
it's a po-
on what the
Yeah, I
what the
think
various
yeah.
things are.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think, yeah, my strategy is definitely not so much what the social media placement is, but it's what's the content? What is it? What is it meant to do? What is it? And the content usually comes from a what can I do?
Yeah.
You know, what am I good at? Oh, I've never done this. Let me, you know, Mkuma Bruce came from a very silly idea that started off as a tweet. Like, hey, well, what if, you know, it's a common conversation, like, what if Zimbabweans had superheroes, what, right? And then from there, I remember thinking how hard for me it would be to stay an anonymous superhero. But that was the general idea. Like, what if Batman was the easiest, because Batman doesn't need any fancy,
Yeah, there's no CGI.
like, exactly.
Yeah.
That
he's
was
a
the
person.
that was the creative. Batman seemed like, he's not even my favorite, but he seemed like the cheapest superhero to attempt, right? Because I was like,
understand that
if
one,
we were to strip away the bells and whistles, he could just be a guy staying in Mabuko. Whereas if we're saying his parents, he's an orphan, or this nigga is, you know, falling on hard times, you know, Bamnin Alfred, you know, the idea just fell into
place.
Yeah, so 3 years later, I was finally in a position to do it, and we did it. There was no thought process after that. Like, one of my biggest, it's people, when is Mkoma Bruce season 2? I'm like, yo, I never saw this thing. This is a limited series.
Okay.
No, this is a limited series. This maybe, I don't know. It's, again, the other reason why Mkoma Bruce probably wouldn't have that longer life is because I realized how much time and effort goes into those kind of things.
No, those things, they're big.
Yeah.
Remember there was that series during COVID.
What do you have for more?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think something like that helped to push a Nkoma Bruce?
It did.
Because
Appetite.
yeah, because once again with that particular
The guys that
show-
filmed do you have more? The guys that filmed Mkoma Bruce.
there we go.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things I was actually gonna ask about Nkoma Bruce is looking at your career as a content creator, right? There are a couple of the buckets we keep talking
Yeah.
about. You've got the stand-up, you've got, I'm just going to call it news and
Yeah.
commentary. You've got the podcasting, and then there are the skits.
Yeah.
And then I know that you also have a life out in the world as an MC and all of
Yeah.
that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to these things here, there's a lot of iteration going on, right? Right now we see Black and Forth.
Yeah.
And for a person who's new to knowing who you are, they'll be like, oh, these guys they've done well,
Yeah.
they suddenly blew up.
Yeah.
Right? But there's a lot of brand cachet that has been built up over the years
Yeah.
between yourself and Munashe.
Yeah.
Right? He had his own thing, you had
Yeah.
your own thing, you joined the forces. You had Saturday in the morning, now you've got this platform here. And someone who listened to Saturday in the morning, as I did,
Yeah.
can hear a huge difference between that product
And this.
and this one.
Yeah.
Whether it's the structure, whether it's what you're willing to say, not say, address, not address, all of that stuff. You can see there's
a difference.
Yeah, there's a difference. When you see Nkoma Bruce versus Kumenya Madhorofiya. Obviously, Kumenya Madhorofiya was, I guess, individualized skit.
Yeah.
Maybe we could point at someone like Comrade Dambura as something that you did multiple times. But you can tell, okay, fine, this is not your first rodeo.
Yeah.
So I guess experience.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of bettering the quality, maturing a platform.
The writing. Yeah. The writing thought process that went into some of those things. You find that something like Comrade Dambura, when he started very explicitly, Comrade Dambura Ndue. As I grew older, he just became Comrade Dambura N.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a little bit more considerations where you're like, I don't have the time to be explaining why this N stands for Ndue. You know, this is something that is easily cancelable in this day and age, if the explanation doesn't satisfy whoever it needs to satisfy. So it's little things like that where, even in the considerations of the kind of skits that we're doing, you find there's a recent one that we did with Godfrey.
Yes.
Right?
I thought that was brilliant. It was well shot.
And not so much. Not so much.
Yeah, the scenes was a mess.
No. Even if you go back, you see an aperture light in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But it's little things like
it's only things that you and I would know.
Yeah. But you find that because the idea is so brilliant, people are willing to forgive
those things. Yes.
Yeah. People are willing to, but you find also that with the writing in something like that has been done in such a way that you find that usually when people do skits, there is one funny idea that is driving the skit.
Yeah.
Where the skit is building up to this funny review or what. But with that skit, the idea is it's funny from the moment that, like it's like a house of cards that is built. So even from when Godfrey is saying, it starts off with him explaining his name is German, is what, and even before you know the police are coming, right? It's
already funny.
It's already like something funny is happening here. I've never heard Godfrey being given a German origin and what. Huh? You know, you're looking at this date, what the bill comes, he starts coughing, what he starts. It's already funny before the police show up, right? The police then show up, and it's like, for somebody who doesn't know the other side of that, it's like the layers keep increasing, right? Then the police themselves, aside from disrupting this date, there's a whole side commentary, them giving their history of why they are doing this, which now creates a whole...
Because it kind of looked like a reality show.
Exactly. You know, they're giving now the backstory of which now creates a layer of, there's continuity in this. This might be a thing where there might be more.
Yes. It can stand alone, but it can be part of a series.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we come back, and then there's the lines that the other officer is dropping, the lines that the young lady is saying. Those are things that I wouldn't have been able to do back when we were doing. You see that skit with Godfrey? I've had that idea for maybe 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Because the first idea we did was in Kumenya Madhorofiya episode 10, where I interrupt the date as a police officer from behind.
Yes.
But the structure of that skit was, it was funny because of the interruption. Before the policemen show up, it's not funny. None of the things that they're saying are funny.
Are particularly funny.
The setting, it's just a normal setting. It's two people on a date. The interruption is what's funny. So the risk with that skit is, if somebody doesn't find that interruption funny, it has fallen apart.
Yes.
It has died.
Yeah.
You look like a nuisance. Whereas 5 years later, I've grown.
Yeah, you've matured.
I've matured.
Your writing is better. Yeah.
This thing now is, you can walk away with an individual line. Like my favorite line was, "Mafama apa unoziva Jeremiah." You know, Slick Pastor is saying, "It's not going so smooth, is it?" You know, it's little, like everyone, like literally each frame can be a meme.
Okay, cool.
So those are things that you only know from doing all those things that we're saying. You know, those are things that you know, like, oh, the timing, or the just experience for, like, from doing as many things as I've been willing to throw myself in. You know, be it as an extra here or as a guy that is behind. I thoroughly enjoy being behind the camera, man. Like setting up shots. Like if you watch that skit, right? Like that thing with Godfrey. You can walk away from that just liking the production value.
Yeah. Like, as a person who's into that type of thing, that was one of the first things. Of course, I enjoyed the dialogue. I enjoyed all of that.
You just like,
but before anything,
you know,
I looked at literally the opening sequence, because I think you opened with the shot of the entrance of the place, and then you got into the date, if I remember correctly. And I was immediately, a person like me is taken. I'm like, production value.
You know, so those are the things that I'm saying. You only know if, or I can't speak for other people. I only know those things because I have gone through all these places, Magamba, you know. I remember I was laughing at Godfrey. Do you know Godfrey is the one that taught me Adobe?
I can see that happen.
Yeah. But the things that I can now teach him off Adobe.
Yes.
But that's simply because in another life I'm probably a nerd, right? Of just curious.
And we're gonna get to that.
Yeah, of just curiosity, of like, okay, how does this work? Okay, if you leave me with this thing, I'm going to figure it out, right? Whereas I wish I would have been like right now, I don't know what is it called that Godfrey would use maybe in his day to day. No, not for pictures.
I know the one that
Lightroom.
you told. Yes, Lightroom.
Yeah, Lightroom.
But he's got a new one now. That's why I'm saying an AI powered one.
Yeah. So you see, because he is more of a zero-in guy on the things, whereas I like having there's certain things that I have a heightened interest in, but there's certain things that I'm like, I like at the very basic to know how this works. Right? So that I never have to be at someone's mercy. Which has been very helpful in my line of work, because what you don't want is having a shot for production purposes, we are waiting on a guy that is doing something else to finish this, because then that would kill us. We can't put this thing out on Friday because this guy said he can only do it on Saturday.
Yeah, I hear you.
So now, okay, how do we edit audio? Oh, okay, take out the memory card out of the, when we started recording, we were using an H5, plug it in Adobe Audition. Oh, this sounds nice. Oh, this preset. Oh, okay. Denoise, what, forward. Oh, mastering. Oh, experiment until we get to where you have a basic workflow. And what I usually do is, when I get to a point where I'm like, I'm fine, I don't learn anything anymore.
You become complacent.
Yeah, I'm like, I've gotten to a point whereby, okay, this is what the podcast needs to sound like. Oh, okay. That's what I need to know. That's
That's where you are.
That's where I am.
Okay. No, I'm completely there with you because I think where you and I are common is that we're self-taught when it comes to a lot of the content creation. I favor Adobe.
Yeah. Ooh.
The one that I use the most is obviously Premiere Pro.
Yeah. The
But
GOAT.
I have a good understanding of Photoshop,
Yeah.
Lightroom,
Yeah.
and After Effects. After Effects is probably the one that I'm the worst at.
Yeah.
But
Same.
if you give me a project,
I can go
I
in
can go in there and figure out
And
how
change
did
it.
that thing rotate or whatever.
Give
it
me a
is you
template
did.
at the very least.
Yes.
I can go tweak,
Yeah, I
place
can
my
do
logo
that.
there, what.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At
the
the
internet
very
is a
least.
great resource.
Exactly.
I think in terms of like these very little things that you can't learn on YouTube.
Yes, that's very true.
My most used Premiere Pro Audition. Most Acrobat.
Actually, funny enough, because I have a radio background.
Yeah.
When I first started out in radio, it was Audition. Audition was the first Adobe program I actually had proper exposure to.
Yeah.
And there's a lot I can do. But one of the things that I like about Adobe, a lot of the things you can do in Audition, you can actually do in Premiere Pro.
Yep.
And it's so bad now.
Yeah.
Like I'm a results driven person, right?
Yeah.
Because I understand the audience doesn't care
No, they don't.
what you call
Why are you bothering yourself?
yeah. So I produce a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
We produce, as Lion Media, we produce a lot of podcasts for clients. The audio versions of those podcasts that are on Apple, Spotify, whatever, all of that stuff is coming straight out of Premiere Pro because there's a lot of presets that are common between the two programs, and there's a lot of the audio engine inside of Premiere Pro is actually very powerful. Yeah. But for me, it's just a results thing. I'm inside this program. I'm already there. Let me just continue with this thing and just export it as.
I remember telling earlier this week. I remember telling Munashe like, "Oh, okay, when you're done exporting the video file, just go and choose the MP3 preset. That becomes the audio version of the podcast."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Wait, what do you mean?" I was like, "No, there's no video, guy. It's the same audio." Yeah. And we finalized like this is the audio. The same audio on the video is what we want. So you don't need to do anything else.
Yeah.
We are just exporting that
and putting it on. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's. I think there's so much power in being able to teach yourself these things, especially. I feel it gives you leverage. The reason why I've tried to amass as much as I can is because I always thought there was a discussion on Twitter a few days ago about how this was Munashe's fault as well. Munashe came and basically snitched that people were having a discussion about this tour and how impressive it is, worldwide and blah 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 blah. And Munashe came and added a new perspective, like, oh, even more impressive is the fact that he's doing this by himself, booking venues and what, right? And that then opened up a discussion where people were like, wait, what do you mean he's doing it by himself? I was like, no, he's the one he doesn't have a manager, doesn't have an assistant. And people were like, what? There were some people that expressed reservations about how such a system is dangerous. He needs structures and what and things like that. And, people offering their 2 cents. The context behind that, the reason why, is probably gotten to a toxic level of just wanting to control everything.
I was actually going to ask you about that because I'm in between myself and Godfrey, we're in that stage where we're bringing more people on board.
Yeah.
We were there.
Similar.
There, where you want to do everything. For me, for example.
It wasn't even that I want to do everything. But the reason why I ended up, like, it's gotten toxic now. It's unsustainable. Very unsustainable.
At least you acknowledge
No,
it's
I do. But the reason why it started off is because as a Zimbabwean creative, first of all, there was no money to give anyone. Let's start there. Whatever money I was making
Yeah, straight
It
into your
could
pocket.
only.
Yeah.
But then the other thing that I started realizing as I was going around was there's almost like people would walk around and say, "Hey, speak to my manager. Speak to my manager. Talk to my. I'll ask my manager." And I'll be like, "Yo, none of us are it's manage. What are we? What are they managing? What would happen now is I felt it almost took away the need to strive for more because there's an expectation that somebody else is doing it for me.
Yeah.
There's an expectation that somebody's out there looking for shows or looking for deals, looking for on your behalf. And I'm like, yo, we need to be hitting the pavement. I have no excuse to be outsourcing this because I want to be able to look for a deal, negotiate that deal, and do it well so that by the time where it becomes unrealistic for me to be doing these things, no one can cheat me out of these things because I've been in a position to negotiate. Because that's another common conversation on the other side where people are like, "Oh, I was broke because my manager was the one who had the passwords to my YouTube.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
My manager is the one who was booking shows on my behalf." So like I want to get to a point whereby I know what the splits are, what is common, what is not common. By the time I need a
bring in a
manager,
team, yeah.
no one can come and tell me random numbers because I'll be like, hold up.
What are you saying? No?
I know the percentage for Cricket, I know the percentage for Eventbrite because I have been in the position. I've negotiated. The only problem is that I let it go for way too long. It's something that has gone on for way too long now that sometimes I feel like it's a con in at times where you're like, right now, I know for a fact nothing is happening in the Madhorofiya world because I'm here. do you get what I mean? Whoever is calling is not getting answered.
Yeah.
Whatever else is meant to be happening isn't happening. So when it comes to things like that, but for the better part, I think this is probably the last year.
Of you doing this.
Yeah, this is probably the last year because I just wanted to take it to a sport where I'm like by myself. I got myself to this level, right? Whoever is now coming into the picture is elevating us. It's not we're getting somebody to help us answer the phone. No. We're getting somebody who has the phone numbers to the Netflix people.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
They are coming to the picture to elevate what's already been created. It's not a let's see what we can do. Because I've done let's see what we can do.
I definitely see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Somehow I immediately think of Steve Bartlett in my head. Diary of a CEO. Because I think he's got the same approach. As much as his podcast is big and popular, and I think he's got a team of like 30.
Yeah.
But all of it is a spin-off of his marketing agency.
Yeah.
He used to do all that back in the day.
Yeah.
And then over time, you bring in people to sort of outsource parts of what you're doing. One of the things that I'm then curious about, I want to talk tech for a moment because I think it's all related. When you and I initially spoke about having this conversation, you said to me, "Oh, but I'm not a techie."
Yeah.
And then I said, "Oh no, but you're a content creator, which means you're forced to be a techie."
Yeah.
Right. You and I spent a few minutes just now talking about just Adobe. Right. We sort of waited for someone who doesn't know the programs, or like, wow, right. So my thing on that front is maybe you can whichever you want to use, maybe propaganda or back and forth.
Yeah.
What are the workflow? What does a workflow look like?
I can do both.
Yeah.
With propaganda, there's a writer's room. I usually
You have a writer's room.
Yeah.
Wow. How many people are you?
There's 2 people.
Okay, cool.
There's a lady. There's a guy.
Yeah.
The original starting point was random thoughts that I would be curious about and things that I thought didn't make sense.
Yeah.
That's usually the starting position of a propaganda episode. Things that I don't think make sense, which there's a lot. Then we say, let's clean it up from a random thought, German thought, let's make it. So I'll put it in the group, right? Like, this is a thought about housing. How is Zimbabwean housing, and how do we respect this housing theory? What? So the writer's room is more of a, it's more research. Like, because the people, they know research, like these people. They know how to.
So it's more firming up the idea, as opposed to are we actually doing this?
No, yeah, because usually I'm like there's times where we get on call, like what are you guys feeling, or but for the most part it ends up being
this is what we're doing.
Yeah, this is what we're doing.
Now we need to back it up.
Yeah, now we need to back it up. And then they go and find the interesting nuggets, or this happened before, or this isn't, or it almost happened, what. And then it's all put in a Google document, because everybody can work from wherever they're working, they're throwing their what. And then the first phase is me creating the structure of this goes first, in terms of like almost like a chronological order of this is our starting position. This is because usually with propaganda we're trying to answer 3 questions, or we're trying to ask 3 questions. So what guides the episode is those 3 questions. What's going on? What are we asking? What do we want out of this episode? And then that information is being thrown in, right? So usually start off is like 10 pages of random information. And then
it gets whittled down.
It gets whittled down, and then you get, after it's whittled down from BFX, people then start to clean up and add little, narratives of how they think that information is best articulated, right? Or this segment and what people. So there is that bit of writing. Then in the end, once everybody has inputted, then I then come and write the episode. This is gone, this is not, this is, it comes down to something like 3-4 pages. So yeah, that is the writing process. A lot of it is heavy on the research. The reason why it was, one, I knew there's certain things that, as arrogant as I am, certain things that I wouldn't be able to know or even have the time to think. Another important aspect being multiple perspectives. There's certain things that come out in those episodes that wouldn't even have been something that I would have considered initially, right? And then it's brought up within the research, and I'm like, oh snap, this is a better angle for us to attack or approach this question from. So yeah, I would encourage people to have, if you can do it, have a writer's room, man.
As you're talking, right, about the, what do you call this, the writing, especially for a show like propaganda, and you remember that you made a comment about the positioning of a propaganda, the elitism, that tension between informing people, but also struggling with the fact that you might be seen as someone who's carrying an agenda.
Yeah.
Do you start at the top, having drawn the conclusion, or do you let the research inform the conclusion? Because you would have noticed something that's weird, like, Amy, why is, maybe to draw on a previous episode, right? Why is sports investment or sport development so poor? Have you already drawn your conclusion at the top before?
It's so hard not to draw a conclusion before, isn't it? Because our usual starting position is because we think we know. But what propaganda now serves to do is to explain that the answer is not that simple.
Yeah.
So the starting for you find that most propaganda episode, the idea is not so much to say X party is failing or President so and so is failing the people. The idea is to apportion the correct amount of blame to the specific person.
Okay.
That's why you find that each episode this is an ICT episode. This is a sports episode. They have very specific people.
Yeah.
Because again, divide and conquer. You know, if that particular minister gets angry, the other minister will be like, Wang, that's you. This is not a...
He didn't attack us.
Yeah, he said you.
Ndiwe.
You know?
Yeah.
But again, it's also the thing where you're trying to create and create information to fit a vacuum where the conversations that we have as young people, we end up droning on government, and it's like, okay, let's give more nuance to these and give specific reasons. As when we say it's not just a blanket government. Within the sports ministry, what is the SRC doing? What are schools, what are district levels doing? So that it's not, we don't just have passing conversations where we're just saying, it's so and so, it's who in that so and so. So it's a yes and no, where you say the starting position might be, we already know where this is going, but sometimes the research reviews a more, even their hands are tied type situation. I think you find that an episode like ICT episode, the reason why we framed it the way that we did was because she had just been appointed 3 weeks
before that. Yeah.
You know, you can't accuse this person of anything. That's why you're framing it as, we hope
that you do ABC.
That you do ABCD, because you recognize.
Okay, so we've got this process, you've got the research, you've got the writer's room, all of that stuff. Quick technical one. I've seen you shooting.
Yeah.
Not shooting, I've seen the episodes.
Yeah.
What I can decipher from the outside is there's a main camera that you're looking dead straight at.
Yeah.
There's a side camera that you
Yeah.
pop into every once in a while.
Yeah.
There's an iPad.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's happening with the iPad. I don't know whether
Yeah.
it's a proper way they're actually getting notes, because I think you're using a teleprompter.
Yeah. So
yeah.
so the iPad on this side is controlling the teleprompter.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So there's an iPad in the teleprompter. No. The iPad is controlling my main camera.
Okay, cool.
Because I'm using the Lumix app.
So you can see yourself.
So I can see myself and make sure that, you know, the focus is right. I'm using my PlayStation 5 controller to control the teleprompter.
Wow. I would not have expected
Yeah,
that.
it's something that I figured out I can do.
Yeah.
I always forget, but it's something that because I haven't done it in a while. But yeah, you find I used to run the teleprompter and have to stand up and go start it again, and then
all of that stuff.
Yeah, all of that stuff. It would almost mess up the focus on this one. So when I figured out that all I had to do was the teleprompter app uses Bluetooth, I would, you know, Bluetooth the PlayStation controller. So now I'm just using that. Whenever I feel like I've messed up, I go back and forth. I don't need to stand up.
Obviously, we can't see this PlayStation controller. At
You can't see. You can't see. But the other camera is on my phone. The Lumix app, and then start record. Bam. The good thing about using the teleprompter, right now, it's just 15-minute episode. You're done in 30 minutes because you're possibly just doing 2 takes for brevity, redoing certain bits, but you're done. Whereas without the teleprompter, trying to remember what and deliver them with the same
energy,
it's while trying to read it, it's not. And then from there, take it to Premiere Pro,
You're doing all the editing yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
It's
you're a one-man...
it's very dangerous. It's a very dangerous process, man. This one man. Do you know the downside, right? That I've started to see with being a one man band for so long is when you start asking for help, when you start getting people like when you start getting like, hey, okay, it's time to get an editor. It creates a ridiculous expectation on the editor.
Explain.
I struggle to. I literally have to tell myself like, okay, they're not going to get it the first 2 times. They're not going to get it the first 2 times because you didn't get it the first 2 times. But because I've been doing it for so long, right? I think what I'm explaining is so straightforward.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll tell you like, hey, here we are. What if you? I'm not the kind of guy who say anything or who will be like who throw. I'll probably be like my default is like, let me do it. Which kind of defeats the whole process of why you're here. Do you get what I mean? So it's toxic.
You know what I found works on my side, and it's taken a lot.
Yeah.
Especially the editing.
Yeah.
I've always prided myself on the editing side of things because I think that's where you can show some creative flair. And all of that stuff is on the editing side, and because it's in your head. Every video on this channel, my tech channel, I think there's like 110 or so. I've done it myself.
Yeah.
Right. As you were talking, I was actually even thinking to myself, I think I should adopt that. What he's just said, especially especially the using a camera app.
Right. Yeah.
Because Canon has an app. But I find it a little bit limiting. Maybe I'm the one who's incorrectly using it.
Yeah.
But maybe, and one of the things I'm also thinking about is maybe making use of a teleprompter, for example.
Yeah.
I've only ever used a teleprompter because I also do
those talking heads.
What you call this? I also do proper TV.
Yeah.
Broadcast TV.
Oh, right.
And when I've done broadcast TV, I've had to use a teleprompter. So I have that skill.
Yeah.
But for myself,
you're like,
you know, I use notes.
Yeah.
And I usually know what I'm going to say.
Right.
And then, and my editing is a lot of...
No, but do you know where a teleprompter now, I felt, aside from knowing what I'm going to say, teleprompter forces you to maintain eye contact.
Yes, it does.
Forces you.
Yeah, it does.
So the effect of that is whatever you're saying is delivered with more intensity than you realize because we are not breaking eye contact. Somebody thinks, whoever is on the other side thinks I'm looking at you, but I'm really trying to find the words, bro. I'm really trying to, but I that was the first, because for me, how I speak usually, I look here, there, and everywhere. Like when because half the time I'm also sort of trying to weigh my words and what and what. So I'm kind of, but with the teleprompter now,
you're forced to.
I'm
and
forced to.
Like, he's talking to me.
Exactly.
Okay.
So even when you're now doing the editing, where it's kind of like you do the punch in, there are times in propaganda where I'm saying something outlandish and I punch in for extra weight. Because I'm looking straight forward in the camera, it actually just looks like a camera just zoomed in, and I was.
You were
like,
there.
Yeah, I was there. Like, yeah, okay, but cool. I think that for your consideration, that's an extra thing.
Back and forth.
Yeah.
Is there a writer's room, or is it just you and Munashe and you just
Back and forth? There's a on the iPad, this is the flow. We start off with the shout outs, what happened last week, the comments were what, this is this week, this is where we're ending, and that's it. Sometimes we discuss all of the things on the notes, sometimes the conversation, as you guys see, it goes left field, it goes wherever it goes. But yeah, there's usually just a very short conversation this podcast is about. Sometimes there's no notes. This podcast is about heartbreaks. This podcast is about what? And then the most important thing about Black and Forth is how we start. how silly do we start? How serious do we start? That always usually communicates the gravitas of the episode. But yeah, and then the thing now with podcasts, you throw it into Adobe Autopod. Autopod cuts it for you, and then you are sitting there trying to figure out, listening through and maybe changing whatever angles you didn't like that Autopod did, and then that's usually it.
Okay.
That's usually it. I think because of Autopod now, it's become so easy to edit a podcast.
And what's it like having a co-host? Because of your of the things that you do consistently, that's the one thing where you are in front of the camera with someone.
Yeah. It's always nice to bounce ideas. What's the word? There's a word that it's disarming. There's a lot of I know it all on propaganda. There's a lot of propaganda gives I know it all energy. Which is something that I can't avoid, right? Which is why there's a lot of self-deprecating humor on propaganda. Because I know how it's sounding. And I don't want it to sound like that. I want it to sound like this is how your German pa next door would tell you these things. So when I look into the camera, it's meant to remind you, like, hey, I'm still your guy. I'm still on your side. I'm still on what? Ha 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 ha. This stuff is rather depressing, but ha 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 ha. With propaganda, with Black and Forth, or with doing stuff with Nigel, or with Nick, it allows you to hear somebody else saying something and either change your mind or be like, you actually walk away from there like, and it takes the weight of being the funny guy, because the burden is shared, so you don't have to be on every time. Sometimes it's just Munashe who's on, and you are being the voice. I'm having to rein him in, or the opposite. So it feels nice shouldering that burden and knowing whoever you're with is, I've been blessed to have so many friends that are incredibly funny, man, where you just know you're standing next to this guy and it's just, yeah.
3 more things before we let you go. First one. Have you ever thought about being an artist? Music artist? Because, yeah.
I would actually argue that I started out as a music artist. If you ask the people that I went to high school with, they would have told you that we thought this guy was going to be but again,
is there a secret SoundCloud somewhere?
No, it never got that far.
Okay, cool.
It never got that far because I think it's one of those things where you are talented enough to be in the high school choir, but that's as far as it goes. What I thank God for is the self-awareness to know that, I don't think my talent was ever any more than that. But I was in the high school choir. We had a music group alongside a dancing group. And where did this singing thing? Probably first year Rhodes was like, you know what?
This is not it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm a karaoke guy now. Okay. Why'd you ask?
Because firstly, anyone who's followed you over the years will see that there's a huge love and a passion for music on your side.
Yeah.
If I remember back to the Suds in the Morning days, Madhorofiya FM,
yeah.
The fact that when you go on tour, you often tour with artists.
Yeah.
You know, also at the same time, you have theme music, all of this stuff,
Yeah.
right? The fact that you and Munashe have turned Black and Forth into a karaoke show
Yeah.
in certain instances. So there's clearly a thing
Yeah,
with
there's
you and this music thing, right? And
yeah.
you're quite plugged in. So I've always wondered. And also, when someone sees an appearance of yours, like let's say Comrade Ambura on Pungwe sessions, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
That was cool for me because
Yeah.
it reminded me of, you know, the old hip hop albums from
Yeah,
back
with
in
the
the
with
day
with the
with the Eddie Murphys and the
yeah.
Chris Rocks that would appear on the skits.
Yeah.
I thought that was dope.
Yeah,
You know, from
I like
yeah.
that. I think Dave Chappelle said something about how every stand-up comedian wanted to be a rapper.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he actually, because he has something similar.
Mm.
You know, you remember how on the Chappelle show they always used to be like a segment for like a music where we would have the Mos Def, your Erykah Badu's, your Kanye West. Even with his shows even when he tours, Dave always has, you know, either Cypher Sounds or whoever. He goes around with these hip hop guys. He even went as far as saying like he feels jealous, you know, of how, and I feel like that for the most part, like just jealous of music as an art form. You find that music has something that I can't even say comedy doesn't have. I don't think anything else has. Music has this, I don't know what, they probably use a word for it, but this, no matter how good a joke is,
Yeah.
like if you were at the show and your wife wasn't at the show, you can't come back and tell your wife the joke. No matter how good, you can't communicate to her that joke the same way you were told, and she won't get the weight of what you're trying to.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
But I can play a song.
But you can play a song.
Okay.
Beyond playing a song, it stays with you. You can hum it, you can recite, you're in the shower, it moves with you.
Okay.
Jokes don't do that.
Oh.
They don't do that.
Yeah.
Like you remember, like, I like that, you know, and that's it. That's it. That's the furthest extent that, you know,
Sure,
like in
it's
terms
gonna
of an imprint, that's as far as we can, you know, like a joke as good as it is, as it can't be translated as easily as music.
Music can.
Yeah, that power, and I've always been so jealous of people that have that, you know, ability to create art that does that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually quite deep. I'd never ever thought about
Yeah.
music as a medium in the way that you are talking about, especially in relation to
I'll give you an
comedy.
example.
Yeah.
You were at the Friday show.
Yes.
You were at the Saturday show.
Yes.
Were they the same show?
No. Completely different.
Completely. Was the content not the same?
It was. And funny enough, I think because I went with my wife.
Yeah.
And I found myself laughing at different points as well.
So you see what that right there, right, is you go back to an artist on tour, right? Music. It hits the same way it did yesterday.
Okay.
Because the notes there's nothing they're changing.
Yeah.
Aside from the interludes of, you know, the music that they perform is the same every time, right? But I can't carry the same energy. Everything has to be tweaked, especially in the instance where I'm like, yo, you find that if you are, aside from the fact that personally I would say, oh, this show I'm a little bit under the weather, right? Or this show I'm feeling a little bit better. You go into the setup of the room, right? To say, oh, this room is set up in a way that the sound can travel, right? This room is set up in a way that the sound can't travel. Up to a certain point, it's limited.
Yeah.
This room is lit in a way that the person on stage can see everyone.
Yeah.
This room is lit in a way that all those things now, comedy is such a complicated art form where even the slightest deviation on the day can throw everything off in a way that can't be quantified.
Yeah.
Like no one would be able to. It just sounds like you're making excuses, right? I remember. It's such a long conversation, but there's different points where things will happen, like just before a show or just during the show, and either you're in the audience and then you just see something changing, like the trajectory of a show, right? And you're like, oh, okay, Whereas I feel like with music, a lot of it is controlled, because as long as the sound sounds right, and everybody is healthy enough, we have a certain amount of control. Have you ever asked yourself why stand-up doesn't generally happen in an open air space?
That's actually a good question.
Like for the most part, comedy happens within closed venues.
Yeah, with the exception of maybe the Kevin Harts of this world.
Yeah, but at that point, when you're doing arenas now, the variables are not that much, right? But when we're at the stage where you can't be doing comedy like generally, the reason why they don't do comedy outside is because you can't control outside. You can't control. You need to do it in a place where, for the most part, within reason, you're controlling the lighting, the sounding, the acoustic. While a plane goes, randomly mosquitoes. You can't take that. All those things.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Everything feeds into the atmosphere.
Yes.
I hadn't thought about it, though.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw it in. Watching you on Friday and on Saturday, we're talking about this, on the day that, as Kandoro was doing his essay tour, I went to the first 2 dates. I would say that there were incidents, not necessarily heckling, right, but those disruptions that will come from an audience.
Yeah.
And I guess those are some of the things that you're talking about. You say that if you don't nip it in the bud.
Yeah.
Is that experience?
It is.
Is there a textbook somewhere that tells you that?
Absolutely none.
Dear comedians, make sure that you...
Absolutely none. I think as a comedian, as a performer, you're just praying everything goes well. You're praying absolutely no heckling. But in the times that it happens, you need to weigh it on its merit. Is this happening out of bad faith? Is it happening out of being excitable? Is this the good thing about a tour? For the most part, everybody that has come to see you. They're excited to see you. It's very hard for there to be somebody who's paying hard-earned money to drive with malicious intent. That's different level hater, right? So the variables of the heckling is, for the most part, it's within the limits of being excitable. That's just a quick AAA. Let's come back. But when you are at a comedy club where the lineup this is a show that happens every day, people come here regardless of who's on the lineup, right? The likelihood of there being malicious intent is higher. Because they're like, hey, you suck! Because they didn't necessarily pay to see you. They paid to be at the comedy club. They are, so it's things like that. But you just have to be, it comes with performing repeatedly.
Have you ever done a comedy club?
Yeah. Oh, you have to.
And? I only say that because I'm speaking...
Different points.
And what you call this? I'm just speaking for myself. I've never seen you at a comedy club personally. I've only ever seen your formal shows. No. So all these things have to start. Like the thought process before it becomes a tour itself. Like you're doing these 5 minutes in different sports, right? The first comedy club that I did was in Cape Town. Actually, Amche. It was the first time. Ooh, terrible,
because I'd been used to performing these jokes at Toastmasters where it's friendly environment. No one even knows you're doing jokes. People think these are funny speeches. And then you go to Zim. I mean, Zim doesn't have a formal comedy club, right? But they are, in essence, comedy clubs. So there, you're now dealing with people that have come either because they are regulars of the pub or establishment that you are. They are actually annoyed that you guys are. You know, I remember.
We're trying to watch soccer.
Yeah, I remember one instance. I used to have this thing where, because I think I was hosting that particular night, and that was the last time they allowed us to perform there because I kept doing this thing where I would be like, "Tika gara gara toti icho," and this guy afterwards came and said, "Fana muda maslogan came." Yeah, and that was the last time. They didn't allow us.
It's odd.
Yeah, it was very odd. I didn't understand if we were doing a slogan for which party. Yeah, but then in the UK, there's within our town there's a Banbury Comedy Club. You know, so for the most part, it's really just having that stage presence, because that's what defeats heckling. You're not there long enough for people to heckle anyway, but you just have to be like, oh, okay. If you walk up there confidently enough, people will be like, oh, yeah, let me give him some time.
Yeah.
And if the material is funny enough, they will give you, however, time you need to speak. I've been fortunate enough that I have never had any intentional heckling where somebody's like, I want to take him down. Yeah, I've been fortunate. But you hear horror instances.
Yeah, well, I will say that, someone who was at the shows, I think you handled yourself pretty well. In terms of, at least arresting it before things go too far. And I guess that's literally playing it by ear.
Yeah, I remember there was a guy who wanted to fight me in Midrand.
Really?
Yeah, we have footage of that somewhere. Midrand show that we came. I was making a joke about? And he came and he did this thing. He wanted to slap me. Oh boy, did I slap that guy. Ooh, yeah, we lost it there.
On stage?
On stage.
Really?
Yeah, it was full on stage. Like this guy walked up on stage fully drunk. I didn't know what he was trying to do. And only when I came, I thought he wanted to whisper or give me money, or I didn't know what was happening. And then he said something about Shadaya or something like that.
Yeah.
So when I quickly realized, it wasn't even, I realized he didn't slap me, but I realized that he wanted to slap me. But because he was drunk, I don't think his hands did what he wanted to do. But now I had a split second to think, what perception did this create?
Yes.
I can't let you get away. That's the only reason why I ended up slapping him. Because I can't let you get away with this and still have control of this show. There's footage of this somewhere happening. It was.
I am going to look for this. I'm sure.
No, it's not online. It's in my hard drive somewhere.
Okay,
I never put it. We never addressed. We never made it any more than it was. And fortunately, everyone was just like, and the security came and took him away, and people clapped, and we moved on with the show.
And the show continued.
The show went so well that I don't think people remember that.
Oh, wow. But that's quite, I can only imagine what something like that must have been like to watch.
Yeah.
I can imagine what it must have been like to experience, that you have someone walking to you and you're like, wow, what is this person coming for?
It was so shocking. I just remembered it now when you were saying, arrest. I was like, oh snap, that happened.
That's a wild story.
Yeah.
One of these days, I'll probably try and bribe you to show me that footage. If you still have it. But I want to, second one before we're done, is you mentioned the fact that you are going to comedy clubs, right? It's not so much the fact that you're going to comedy clubs, but it's the fact that you're going to try out your material at comedy clubs in the UK. And I can imagine that it's not a Zimbabwean crowd.
No.
Right? So what I wanted to pick your brain on is, Um, a lot of Zimbabwean creatives
Yeah.
are, I don't want to say hamstrung, but there's a certain, let's just call it a limitation, where your sphere of influence
Yeah.
is limited to Zimbabwean circles.
Yeah.
Right? If you go on tour,
Yeah.
you're not going to you're not going to, let's say, the UK to perform for
Yeah.
British people. You're going to the UK to perform, let's say, for Zimbabweans in the UK,
Yeah.
for example. Are you concerned at all about breaking past that point when you see someone like a Trevor Noah, who was making like strictly South African types of stand-up shows, being able to then have content that appeals to a broader audience? Are you concerned at all about that type of thing, or are you okay to cater to Zimbabwe?
That's a good question, right? And there's so many layers to it. I would actually argue that I've never catered to a Zimbabwean audience.
Okay, cool.
And by that I mean all these are concepts, right? That I believe from the bottom of my heart can work anyway. But because I am Zimbabwean and right now I have access to Zimbabweans, that's my audience.
Okay.
But if you take out the topics that we're doing for propaganda is a Pan-African show. We can talk using propaganda about the electricity challenges facing Africa.
Yeah.
We can talk about the water problems. We can talk about the electoral issues. What I am doing right now is practicing off what I have access to. The other thing that I believe in is things should be done in stages. I believe it would be foolhardy of me to just wake up and say I'm an African comedian without an audience. What Trevor did so well and what I hope to emulate is he grew with his people, right? He did, the day walkers, he did the nationwide tours, he did all this and he started touring in Africa.
Yeah.
Right? When he was touring in Africa, when he started moving, wherever he was moving, he did that off the power and basis that he had done enough for his people.
Back home.
Back home, to the extent that his people were like, yo, we have enough confidence in this guy that he can make you laugh. But the starting point is that your people need to know you first, right? I find a lot of people want to jump the stage and just say, I want a global audience. But who's going to speak to that global audience on your behalf? You can't be in all these houses at once. You actually need bodies, people that speak on your behalf.
Yeah.
You need people that have been so impressed by you that they say, nah. When they have those conversations like, oh, who's your comedian? When these kids at school, whether it's in Belgium or Germany or whatever, because they will have those conversations, right? Like, be it in, oh, this is the Nigerian guy. This is the Nigerian comedian right now. This is the Zambian comedian. Who's the Zimbabwean comedian? If they don't know you, because you kind of have been chasing everyone, which is the danger, right? When you've been chasing everyone, you don't have enough people that will speak on your behalf. I have every intention of taking this as far as I can. But what has been very important to me, even if it doesn't work out, I know I'll always have my people.
Okay.
I know, because that's another risk as well. It's not guaranteed that it ever works out the way that you want it to work out.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does so, sometimes it does better, sometimes it just doesn't. But if it does, if it doesn't, I'll always have my people. I always have those people. Imagine now the stress of doing all that, trying to chase the world, and you fail. And then after that, you're like, okay, let me create a Zimbabwean audience. They are never good because they are watching. As you chase for the appeasement of the world and not them. I've seen countless artists who, some of these examples are so obvious, right? But you have artists that will perform at international festivals, artists that will be part of, a FIFA soundtrack or whatever it is, but cannot fill up a Reps theater. They are not known. And I know for a fact that is something that they crave more than anything. Because even when that success, even when you are uber successful in your LA mansion or your London townhouse or whatever, some of it feels empty.
Without your people.
Without your people. There are certain people that don't care at all about that, but the people that care and remember, oh, my identity is rooted in what? When you don't have the success, it almost feels empty. And you're like, I don't feel celebrated by my own people. Because you definitely won't be celebrated by the British. I'll tell you that. Because there's already enough people fighting to be celebrated by the British. People who are already British. So on what basis will you fit in that criteria?
Yeah.
Right? But back home also people are like, hey, the only thing that is Zimbabwean is your name. We don't really know you. At your peak, you never came here to perform, be it in Pablo's or be it in whatever. You never looked like you were checking for us. So that is a thing that I've always felt like, that I've always wanted. When we create these, the reason why it was very important to move from Saturday in the morning into something like Black and Forth is because we didn't want that limitation of a name, right? It's a podcast that wherever it goes, it becomes a podcast that is good. It's not a Zimbabwean podcast. We can start with these people, but it's a podcast that we hope anyone who's listening and enjoying
can grow
and share with their friends. Like, hey, this is a funny podcast. Check it out. What's his name? Black and Forth. There's no one who's asking explain to me what Black and Forth is. But those are the kind of things that would happen with Sadza in the morning. What is Sadza? Not so much that there is a negative connotation to Sadza, but it's just a barrier to entry.
Okay,
Whoever doesn't explain it satisfactorily, it's like,
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that I think about. Even if you listen to the things that I say in my stand-up, even this show that we're performing is a South Africa show. The subject matter is heavy on the relatability aspect of people that this is their context, right? When I go to Zim, there is no section about South African elections. Even the references that we are making are not. It's a different show to the show that we perform in Germany. It's a different show to the show that we perform in London, because all those contexts are different and they need to be honored. And I say that to say, when we now get to a stage where we're performing, if it's the Apollo Hammersmith, that context will be, I'm not taking a say Wicknell joke to the Apollo Hammersmith.
Yeah.
But the joke that will get us to the Apollo Hammersmith is a Wicknell joke.
Yeah.
Because more than anything, people like to see people who are supported. It's very hard to make the argument to Netflix that I'm a top comedian when you don't have people. It's very, very difficult. So if I was right now trying to fit in the box of, oh, I'm a world comedian, I can make jokes about Trump. I can definitely make jokes about Trump, but to who? My audience right now is people that know about Trump, but they don't care about Trump. Because they have things that they feel in this moment supersede that. Like in their agency metrics, Trump is nowhere near that. But I'm going to get to the other side by showing that I can make jokes in their pocket, the things that they care about.
Yeah.
Right? And hope that they believe that I'm adaptable enough. Whatever situation you throw me, I'll be able to make jokes about that. The jokes that I'm making now are not the jokes that I can only make about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we have covered a wide gamut.
Yeah.
I won't lie. There's so much more. I could what you call this? I could talk about, maybe pick your brain on.
Yeah.
But I do certainly hope that people found this conversation valuable.
Yeah.
Certainly been very valuable for me.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm sure you
Very
could
interesting,
see,
man.
had some curiosities and, got to have, certain of those questions answered. Very important, I think, discussions to be having.
Yeah.
I think content creation is something that many people should be thinking about.
Yeah.
I lean towards businesses.
Yeah.
And, businesses should be thinking around, how they, the stories that they're telling, how they're positioning their businesses, their organizations and all that. Brands, people, individuals, the country, all of that stuff, it feeds,
Yeah.
into that. And obviously getting into the techie parts of the, that was great. But listening to how you've thought about
Yeah.
the Kandoro brand and the different properties under that and how you attack
Yeah.
all of the different projects, incredibly valuable. And yeah, we hope to, see you grow even more.
Thank you.
One of these days, I'm hoping to actually see your stand up in Zim. I'm yet to see your stand up in Zim.
It's wild.
Yeah, I've seen him performing in South Africa and in Dubai, but I've never seen him.
That's.
But I've never seen him.
I had actually forgotten about that.
Performing in, performing in Zim, because once again, the context, the material that comes out of those contexts.
I think in Zim I'm a bit looser.
You think so?
Yeah. Because in Zim, like, I know what the context, like, I never have to actively think about what.
You just plug
like
in.
the thing is with Zim, it's like nothing is off limits, right? For me, like, I can take it anywhere. But if I'm anywhere else in the world, especially in the Zim context, I have to think about, like, the references have to be like face value.
Yeah.
Like, I have to give you a name that you don't have to think twice. You can't mistake, right? So even if I don't want to use a MyTT, I have to use a MyTT because that's the name that would be on face value common to everyone.
Understand,
Even if I want to use Mbinga, I have to use Wicknell, even if I don't want. But in Harare, because everyone is so plugged in, you can make specific references. Do you get what I mean? So you can say things like, First Street, Zimex Mall, things like that. That's because if something happened there, that's where it happened, and everybody would know. That's where. But if I want to, I'm like, Airport Road, Road Port, because South Africa, you probably know either or of those two. If I want to situate, so those are the little nuances, little quirks that you are considering. And even worse when you're in a place like England now, because for the most part, people know surface level if it's politics. So you have to speak to the on a almost superficial level of top level politics that everyone knows. You can't go into the intricacies of this is what the rate on the street is.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? So it's little things like people know there's inflation, but you are relating it to cost of living. That's as far as you can.
Yes.
That's as far as you can get. You can't refer to some of these junior ministers. You are stopping at Minister of Finance. You are stopping at Reserve Bank Governor, because that's the information that they are getting. I love it. It's an interesting game, man. You have to stay sharp.
Yeah, no, stay sharp. We'll be, like I said, we'll be watching, and we wish you the best. Like I said, really been great to see your journey. Wishing you nothing but growth. From this point forwards, and hopefully there are many that have been inspired by your journey and your story, and also to just let people know that when it comes to content creation, just do it, man.
Just do it.
Yeah, just do it. If you're going to be one man, shooting an entire news program on your own, you do that. But just do it. So big shout out. Thank you so much. We were in conversation.
Thanks so much, bro.
King Kandoro.
Yes, sir.
You, man.
This is Muffs Too Much, and you're watching Mob Justice TV. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And remember to share the content. You never know who you're going to help. Stay blessed, stay alive, and thriving.